Caleb Morgan lived most of his life on the wide, open land, where the sky seemed endless, and the wind carried the smell of dust, grass, and old traditions. He grew up on that ranch the same way his father and grandfather did, learning to wake before sunrise, to feed the cattle in the same order, to fix the fences the same old way, and to end every day with a clear routine. People in town said he was dependable, honest, and predictable. Some admired him for it, and some joked that Caleb would never change, not even if the world flipped upside down. For Caleb, the ranch was not just land, it was his identity. Every old rule he followed made him feel closer to the men who raised him. His father used to say, "A Morgan doesn't rush life, son. We move steady." Caleb believed those words so deeply that he carried them into his adulthood. Even when he became the owner of the ranch, he treated every sunrise and sunset with strict discipline. There was comfort in routine. There was safety. But comfort also brought loneliness. Caleb was in his early 30s when he finally admitted to himself that he wanted a partner, someone who could share the quiet mornings, the slow evenings, and everything in between. But in his small town, most women already had families or dreams far from ranch life. When a friend mentioned mail-order marriages, Caleb didn't show excitement, but he listened. After weeks of thinking, he chose to write a letter. It was simple and honest, just like him. He didn't expect much. Then came the reply written in careful handwriting, polite, warm, and surprisingly direct. The woman's name was Elsa Brandt, from a northern mountain region he had never heard of. She said she was tall, strong, used to cold weather, and hoped for a peaceful home where she could build a future. Caleb read her letter 3 times before he answered. It felt unreal, like a story someone else was living. When she finally arrived weeks later, stepping out of the wagon with her large travel trunk balanced easily on one shoulder, Caleb's breath caught without warning. Elsa was tall, much taller than he imagined, and broad-shouldered, with long arms, strong hands, and gentle blue eyes that didn't match her powerful frame. She looked like a woman carved from mountain stone, yet shaped with softness around the edges, as if strength and kindness lived together inside her. People in town stared. Some whispered. Caleb noticed, but Elsa didn't. She simply smiled at him, humble and hopeful. Their marriage was simple, without a big gathering. Caleb followed every tradition. He had grown up with plain clothes, calm words, formal gestures. Elsa didn't complain, but she didn't fully understand why everything had to be so slow and careful. Still, she respected his customs and stepped into her new life with steady bravery. On the ranch, Elsa tried her best to learn everything. She woke early, watched Caleb work, copied his movements, and helped wherever she could. She lifted heavy supplies with ease, surprising him every time. She could carry hay bales under each arm like they were made of feathers. When storms rolled in, she held down loose boards on the roof while Caleb hammered them into place. She worked beside him without fear, without complaint, and without needing rest. But despite her strength, there was a quiet shyness in her. She often lowered her head when talking, as if afraid of being too much, too big, or too noticeable. Caleb admired her strength, yet he still treated her gently, almost too gently. He kept his distance, spoke formally, and followed every rule of old Western marriage behavior. He believed that was the respectful thing to do. Elsa noticed. Day by day, she watched him maintain careful space between them. She wondered whether this was just his way, or if he saw her differently. She helped him with cooking, washing, repairing fences, and checking on the cattle. She tried to make him laugh with small jokes. She tried to show she was grateful. But sometimes, when he wouldn't look directly at her for long, a small sadness grew inside her. Caleb, on the other hand, told himself he was giving her time to adjust. He didn't want to overwhelm her with too many changes at once. He thought she needed space. He thought being slow and traditional would show respect. He had no idea she misunderstood his caution as distance. Their days were busy. Their evenings were quiet. Elsa often waited for him to speak first. Caleb waited for the proper moment, as his father had taught him. Their silence grew thick like fog, but neither knew how to clear it. Then came a night that changed everything. The sky turned orange as the sun dropped behind the hills. The cattle had been restless all day from the heat, and Caleb had spent hours tightening gates and checking the water troughs. By the time they walked into the house, he was covered in dust, tired from the long afternoon. Elsa wiped sweat from her forehead and looked at him with concern. She had seen him push himself all day without resting. Caleb was about to start his evening chores, gathering tools, checking the stable, cleaning the lanterns because that was the routine. He always did those tasks before going to sleep. Tradition said a rancher finishes every small job, no matter how tired he is. But Elsa stepped closer, gently placing her large hand on his arm. Her voice was soft and sincere, not demanding, not annoyed. "Let's make it quick tonight," she said. She meant the chores. She meant he should rest. She meant there was no need to push himself after such a hard day. Caleb froze where he stood. Her words echoed in his head in a way she never intended. Let's make it quick. He wondered if she meant their marriage, their life together, or the time they spent each evening. He wondered if she was tired of the slow, quiet life he lived. He wondered if she regretted marrying him. A sudden fear rose inside him, surprising even himself. Elsa watched his face change, confusion filling her eyes. She thought he didn't understand. She thought maybe she used the wrong words. She tried again, but he had already withdrawn into himself, the way he always did when something scared him. He nodded slowly and stepped away, saying only, "All right." But nothing was all right. Elsa stood quietly in the kitchen, feeling the air grow heavy. Caleb went outside to gather the tools he didn't even need to touch that night. He worked slowly, more slowly than usual, thinking too much. The lantern light flickered on his face, showing worry he didn't know how to express. Inside the house, Elsa sat at the table, fingers curled softly together, wondering what she had done wrong. She didn't want to pressure him. She didn't want him to think she disliked their life. She only wanted him to rest. But she could tell she had hurt him somehow. That single misunderstanding became the seed of the bigger trouble that would follow, trouble neither of them expected. Trouble that would show them both how fragile unspoken feelings can be. Caleb lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, hearing her words again and again. Elsa lay awake too, staring at the window, thinking she had pushed him too far. Two people in the same home, both wanting peace, both wanting each other's comfort, both afraid of speaking first, and both completely unaware of how deeply they misunderstood each other. Caleb woke up the next morning before sunrise, just like always. He moved quietly around the house, careful not to wake Elsa, though she was already awake and lying still, listening to every sound. He didn't know she was awake. She didn't know he was avoiding eye contact. Both of them were lost in their own thoughts after the misunderstanding the night before. Caleb stepped outside into the cool morning air. The grass was wet with dew, and the sky held a faint glow that slowly brightened. Normally, he found comfort in this hour, when the world was quiet and predictable. But today, his chest felt heavy. Elsa's words kept returning to him. "Let's make it quick tonight." He didn't understand why such simple words hurt him so much, but they did. Maybe because he feared losing her. Maybe because he feared failing as a husband. He fed the cattle slower than usual, his mind far away. Every time he tried to tell himself he was overthinking, he imagined Elsa feeling disappointed or tired of him. He imagined her thinking he wasn't enough. He imagined her wanting a different kind of life, something he couldn't give. Inside the house, Elsa sat at the table with a cup of warm tea. She held it with both hands, even though her hands were large enough to wrap around half the cup. She stared at the steam rising but didn't drink. She kept replaying Caleb's expression from the night before. The way he froze. The way he stepped away. The way his eyes changed when she spoke. She hadn't meant anything bad. She only wanted him to rest. But now she wondered if her words sounded rude to him, or impatient, or ungrateful. She didn't know. She didn't understand the traditions of this land yet. She worried she had broken some rule she didn't know existed. When Caleb returned inside, she lifted her head quickly. He slowed his steps, unsure what to say. He didn't want his voice to shake or reveal anything. He picked up his hat, placed it on the hook, and said, "Morning," in a flat, polite tone. Elsa answered softly, "Good morning, Caleb." Perfect. Both voices sounded normal, but both hearts felt tense. They shared breakfast in silence. Caleb talked a little about checking the western fence. Elsa talked a little about finishing laundry. Their words touched the surface of their life, but not the deeper place where their worries lived. When Caleb left to work, Elsa watched him from the window, wondering when he had started acting like she was fragile or far away again. She missed the small smiles he used to give her during their first weeks. She missed the warm silence they once shared, the kind that felt peaceful instead of heavy. She wanted to fix things, but she didn't know how. The day grew warmer as noon approached. Caleb fixed fences with more force than necessary. Elsa worked around the house, washing clothes, sweeping, and repairing a loose gate. Usually she finished chores with a sense of satisfaction. But today everything felt slow and cloudy. Later in the afternoon, Caleb slipped while carrying a heavy bucket of water. The ground was still damp from morning dew, and his boots slid unexpectedly. He fell hard onto his side. Before he could stand, Elsa rushed out of the house. She moved so quickly that the ground almost shook under her strong steps. She knelt beside him and helped him up with gentle hands. He could feel how easily she lifted him. Her strength had always amazed him. But today, it also reminded him that she could survive without him. Maybe she didn't need him at all. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice trembling. "No," he said quickly. "I told you you were tired," she whispered, looking down. Caleb didn't know what to say. He didn't want her to feel bad, but he also didn't want to admit he had been distracted, thinking about her words. So he forced a small smile and said, "It's nothing. I'll be fine." But the smile didn't reach his eyes. Elsa noticed. She always noticed. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the hills, the two of them worked on small chores separately, Caleb cleaning tools, Elsa tightening loose boards. Usually they shared these tasks, but tonight they kept distance between them, as if unsure how close they were allowed to stand. After the chores were done, Elsa walked quietly to the edge of the porch, where the view stretched far into the open fields. She watched the sky change colors. Caleb walked past her, but didn't stop to talk. He went inside instead. That moment felt like a small cut in her heart. When she entered the house, she heard men's voices outside. She peeked through the curtain and saw two neighbors talking near their horses. They didn't know she was close enough to hear. Their words floated clearly in the evening air. "Caleb married a big one of them said in a laughing tone. Bet he only wanted her help for ranch work. Maybe he needed someone strong to carry the ranch for him," the other joked. Not much of a match otherwise. Elsa's heart dropped. She did not cry, but her breath caught. She placed her hand on the windowsill and closed her eyes. She had always known she was different. She was used to stares, whispers, and jokes. But hearing those words about Caleb, that hurt more. She didn't want him to face judgment because of her. She didn't want people to think he married her for selfish reasons. She wanted him to be proud of her, not ashamed. She stepped back from the window quietly and walked to the bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her hands. They were strong hands, hands that could lift heavy beams, carry water, fix fences, and calm a frightened calf. But she wondered if these hands were too big for a gentle life with Caleb. She wondered if her size was a burden. As night grew deeper, Elsa began packing her small wooden chest. She folded the few clothes she brought from her homeland. She packed the scarf her mother knitted for her. She placed her old necklace inside. She did everything slowly, as if unsure whether leaving was the right choice but thinking it might be the kinder one. She didn't want Caleb to lose respect in the town. She didn't want him to deal with comments behind his back. She didn't want him to feel stuck with someone who didn't fit into his world of traditions and expectations. Caleb found her a few minutes later, standing by the chest with her hands resting on the lid. His heart jolted at the sight. She looked like someone preparing to walk away forever. "What are you doing?" he asked quietly. Elsa stiffened. She didn't turn around immediately. When she did, her eyes looked tired, almost defeated. I was just arranging my things," she answered, though it wasn't fully true. Caleb noticed the sadness in her voice, but he didn't know its cause. He assumed it was because of him. He assumed she regretted their marriage. He assumed she felt trapped in a lonely life with a man who couldn't give her what she wanted. The assumptions hurt him deeply. Elsa looked down at her hands again. "I don't want to make your life harder, Caleb." His heart tightened. Something in her tone sounded like goodbye. "You're not making anything harder," he said. But the words came out too soft, too unsure, not strong enough to reach her. Elsa nodded, but she didn't fully believe him. She stepped past him gently and walked to the living room, pretending to look for something. Caleb watched her go with worry chewing at his thoughts. For the first time, he truly feared she might leave. He feared he had pushed her away without meaning to. He feared he had failed as a husband before he even learned how to be one. Night settled slowly over the ranch. The wind grew cool. The lantern inside flickered. Elsa sat alone at the table, her fingers tracing the wood grain. Caleb stood in the doorway, watching her, wanting to speak, but unable to find the right words. Two people in the same home, both hurting silently. The misunderstanding had grown bigger without either of them seeing the full truth. Elsa thought she didn't belong. Caleb thought she didn't want him. And neither knew how close they were to falling apart over one simple sentence spoken with good intentions. The only thing they both shared in that moment was fear of losing each other. Caleb sat alone in the barn long after sunset. The smell of hay, wood, and old leather usually calmed him. But tonight, even this familiar place felt uneasy. He held a piece of rope in his hands, turning it over again and again without thinking. His mind was too full. Every thought returned to Elsa, her soft voice, the sadness in her eyes, her quiet movements around the house, and the way she stood beside the small wooden chest earlier that evening. He didn't want to imagine her leaving, but the fear kept growing. He tried to understand where everything went wrong. He replayed her words again. "Let's make it quick tonight." He tried to hear them in her voice, tried to see the moment clearly. Maybe he misunderstood. She didn't look angry. She didn't sound tired of him. She looked concerned, worried for him, not annoyed with him. He pressed his thumb against the rope and swallowed hard. Caleb knew one thing for certain. Elsa wasn't someone who spoke carelessly. She never used sharp or hurtful words. She always thought before speaking. So what if he had taken the meaning wrong? What if he had reacted poorly? What if his silence made her think he didn't want her? The idea hurt more than he expected. He set the rope aside and leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. The barn lantern cast a warm glow around him, but it didn't touch the heaviness in his chest. He thought of how Elsa always helped him without being asked. How she lifted heavy beams with ease but never bragged about her strength. How she smiled shyly whenever he thanked her. She tried so hard to fit into his world, a world that still confused her. And what had he done? He had stayed quiet, followed old traditions, and kept his feelings locked inside. He remembered his father's words. A Morgan man shows care by working hard, not by talking. Caleb lived by those words all his life. But Elsa wasn't his father. Elsa wasn't someone who understood those old sayings. She came from a different land with different customs. She needed words, not silence. She needed warmth, not distance. For the first time, Caleb wondered if holding on to traditions so tightly was actually hurting the person he cared about. He stood up suddenly, feeling a spark of determination inside him. He walked out of the barn and looked toward the house. A single, warm light shined from the window. Elsa was inside, probably sitting alone and thinking she didn't belong. He couldn't let her feel that way, not now, not ever. Caleb took a slow breath and started walking back to the house. Inside, Elsa sat at the table again, just like the night before. Her hands rested on her lap, and her eyes were fixed on the dim lantern flame. When she heard his boots on the wooden floor, she didn't look up immediately. She felt unsure, almost afraid of saying something wrong again. Caleb stopped a few steps away from her. He had no practiced words, no prepared speech. All he had was honesty, which he had avoided for too long. "Elsa," he said softly. She lifted her head. Her eyes looked tired, as if she had been holding her breath for hours. Caleb took another breath, steadying his voice. "We need to talk." Elsa froze. She thought he might ask her to leave. She straightened her posture, preparing herself for whatever he would say. Caleb pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. His hands rested on the table, rough from years of work, but trembling slightly. He forced himself to meet her eyes. I think I misunderstood you last night," he began. Elsa blinked, surprised. She didn't expect him to be the one admitting anything. "You said, 'Let's make it quick tonight.' I took it the wrong way." He swallowed and looked down briefly before lifting his gaze again. "I thought you were tired of me, or tired of our life together." Elsa's eyes softened, but she didn't speak yet. She wasn't sure if he was finished. Caleb continued, voice low and unsure. "I didn't want to push you. I thought, maybe I wasn't what you hoped for." His shoulders tensed. "Maybe you regretted coming here." Elsa felt a sharp ache in her chest, an ache mixed with relief and sadness. She took a slow breath and finally spoke. "Caleb, I wasn't talking about us," she said gently. "I was talking about the chores. You worked too much yesterday. You were tired. I only wanted you to rest." Caleb closed his eyes for a moment. The truth hit him harder than he expected. He had left her worried all day over something she never meant. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have asked. I should have talked to you instead of assuming things." Elsa shook her head. "I think we both misunderstood. I thought you were upset with me. I thought you didn't like my words. I thought, maybe I don't fit into your life the way you hoped." Caleb straightened quickly. "That's not true." Elsa looked down at her large hands. "People in town whispered again today. They said maybe you married me only to help with the ranch." Her voice grew even softer. "I don't want to make your life harder. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want people to laugh at you because of me." Caleb's heart tightened sharply. The whispers, the jokes. He knew exactly which neighbors she had overheard. The thought of her hearing their words filled him with frustration. He wished he had been there to stop them. He didn't want Elsa to feel small or unwanted. Not ever. He reached across the table slowly, respectfully, and placed his hand gently over hers. Her hand was much larger than his, strong and warm, but she didn't pull away. "Elsa," he said with quiet firmness, "I don't care what they say. Not one bit." She looked up at him, uncertain. "I married you because I wanted a partner," Caleb continued. "Not a ranch helper, not a worker. You." He hesitated, but only for a second. "I wanted you." Elsa's eyes shined with emotion. She didn't expect such clear words from him. Caleb wasn't a man who explained his feelings easily. He was a man of action, slow steps, and old customs. But today, he was someone different, someone braver. Caleb took a shaky breath. "I've been hiding behind tradition," he admitted. "I thought moving slow and following old rules would make you comfortable. But maybe I made you feel unwanted instead." He lowered his head slightly. "No, no, no. That was my mistake." Elsa's fingers curled gently around his hand. "Caleb, your traditions are part of you. I respect that. But I didn't know how you truly felt." Caleb nodded. "That's my fault. I should have told you." A long moment passed between them. Quiet, but no longer heavy. Soft, but no longer painful. This silence felt different, like the beginning of something honest. Caleb stood slowly and walked around the table until he was beside her. Elsa looked up. Her eyes filled with surprise and uncertainty. Caleb knelt beside her, not out of fear, but out of sincerity. He took her hand again. "I don't want you to leave," he said. "I don't ever want you to think you're not good enough. You're strong. You're kind. And you've worked harder to belong here than anyone else. I see that. And I admire it." Elsa's throat tightened. She tried to speak, but only a soft breath came out at first. I want to stay," she finally whispered. "I just didn't want to stay if you didn't want me." Caleb looked straight into her eyes. "I do want you. More than you know. But I need to stop hiding behind old rules. I need to be honest. I need to talk to you. I need to show you that you're not alone anymore." Elsa felt warmth spread through her chest, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. She had come to this land hoping for a home, but she never expected someone to speak to her this openly, this gently, this sincerely. Caleb stood and offered his hand to her. She took it hesitantly, and he pulled her up. For the first time since their wedding, he stepped closer on his own. Without hesitation, without fear. He placed his hand softly on her arm. "I'm done letting old traditions get in the way," he said quietly. "From now on, it's you and me. Together. No distance. No silence. No fear." Elsa felt tears rise, but not from sadness, from relief, from hope, from feeling wanted. Caleb smiled softly. A real smile this time. Not the forced one he used to hide behind. "We'll figure everything out. Not by following old rules, but by making our own." Elsa nodded slowly, her heart finally at peace. For the first time, Caleb wasn't the rancher who kept everything inside. He wasn't the man who followed old traditions no matter the cost. He was someone brave enough to speak from his heart. And Elsa, the giant woman who once feared she didn't belong, finally felt truly seen. That night, nothing was rushed. Nothing was silent. Nothing was distant. It was the first night they faced their feelings honestly, and the first night they truly felt like partners. The morning after Caleb and Elsa finally spoke honestly felt different from any morning before. The sky looked clearer, the air felt softer, and even the slow-rising sun seemed to shine with a warmer light. Elsa woke up expecting the same quiet distance she had grown used to. But instead, she saw Caleb already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, looking back at her with a gentle smile she had never seen from him before. It was small, almost shy, but it was warm and real. "Good morning," he said softly, as if testing his new courage. Elsa blinked, surprised, then smiled back. "Good morning, Caleb." It was the first morning she did not fear the silence. It wasn't heavy now. It wasn't empty. It felt peaceful, full of unspoken understanding, like two people standing at the beginning of a new road together. When they stepped outside, Caleb walked closer to her than he usually did. He didn't stay several steps ahead or pretend to be too busy. For the first time since their marriage, he matched his pace with hers. Elsa noticed immediately, and her heart warmed. As they fed the animals, Caleb talked more than usual small things, simple things. But each word felt like a little bridge between them. He pointed out a new calf born at dawn, told her about a fence corner he planned to rebuild, and even laughed softly when a goat bumped into him. Elsa listened, smiling. She felt lighter than she had in weeks. When they repaired the eastern fence together, Caleb didn't just give instructions and step away. He handed her nails, held the boards steady for her, and laughed when her strength pressed the plank in too hard. "You've got to be a little gentle with these old posts," he joked. "And you need stronger fences," she replied with a grin. He laughed again, a sound that felt new to both of them. Later, when they went back to the house for lunch, Caleb surprised her further. He opened the door for her, not as a formality, but as a natural gesture. And while they ate, he didn't sit stiff and silent like before. He talked about his father, his childhood, the old traditions he followed without thinking. Elsa listened carefully, touched that he finally trusted her with the pieces of his life he had never shared. "I thought traditions were the only way to keep this ranch steady," he admitted. "But yesterday, I realized something. They were keeping me from you. They're—" Elsa paused with her spoon halfway to her mouth. "I didn't want to change your ways," she said gently. "I only wanted to understand them. And I want to understand you," Caleb replied, with a firmness that surprised even him. "Not by guessing, not by assuming, but by asking, by listening." Elsa lowered her gaze shyly. "I would like that." The afternoon passed peacefully. They cleaned the barn together, worked on repairing an old saddle, and stacked firewood for the coming cold evenings. Each task felt less like work and more like a shared rhythm, two people moving with the same quiet harmony. Later, when the sun dipped lower, Caleb wiped sweat from his forehead and looked toward the house. "Let's rest a little," he said softly. "We've done enough for today." Elsa's heart warmed again. Days ago, he would have worked until exhaustion, just because tradition said a rancher should never stop early. But now, he was choosing balance, choosing her. Inside, they sat in the living room. Caleb fixed a loose leg on the table, while Elsa embroidered a simple cloth. She wasn't very good at embroidery yet, but she liked practicing. As she worked, Caleb looked up at her from the floor. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to think silence meant everything was fine. But I think maybe silence only works when hearts are already close." Elsa paused her stitching and looked at him with soft eyes. "I'm glad you're talking to me now," she said. "It feels warm. It feels right." Caleb nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "I want to keep it that way." Evening crept in slowly. They cooked together something they had never done before. Caleb chopped vegetables while Elsa stirred the pot, humming a northern tune from her homeland. Caleb listened with quiet wonder. Her voice was deep and soothing, and the melody twisted through the air like a ribbon of calm. After dinner, they stepped outside to watch the sunset. The sky was pink and orange, glowing softly over the open land. Caleb leaned against the porch railing, hands resting loosely, while Elsa stood beside him, her tall frame silhouetted against the fading light. "You know," Caleb said suddenly, "I used to think I had to follow every rule my father taught me. But now," he turned to her with a small smile, "now, I think we should make our own way." Elsa looked at him with gentle curiosity. "Our own traditions?" "Yes," Caleb said. "Ones that fit us. Ones that feel right." Elsa felt a soft warmth spread through her heart. "I would like that," she said. They stood together in silence. But this silence was soft, comforting, like a blanket wrapped carefully around them both. For the first time since their marriage, Elsa felt completely safe, completely wanted, completely home. They went inside when the first stars appeared in the sky. Elsa was about to head to the bedroom when Caleb gently took her hand, not forcefully, not nervously, but with quiet certainty. "Elsa," he said, "there's something I want to say." She turned toward him fully. Caleb's thumb brushed softly across her hand. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Proud to be your husband. Proud of the way you work, the way you care, the way you stay strong even when you feel unsure." He swallowed, emotions rising in his chest. "I want you to know, you belong here. Not because of strength, not because of ranch work, but because you're you." Elsa's eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Not in her homeland, not in any place she passed through, not in any letter she received. Caleb's words felt like a warm hand on her heart, steady and sincere. "Thank you," she whispered. "I never thought I would hear such words in my life. I never thought I would hear such words in my life." Caleb stepped a little closer. "You deserve them," Elsa breathed out slowly, holding his hand carefully, as if afraid to crush it. "A life where we talk, a life where we work together, a life where we are not afraid." Caleb nodded. "We will, I promise." Time moved gently after that. They finished putting out the lanterns, closed the doors, and prepared the house for the night. But just as they reached the bedroom doorway, Elsa glanced at him with a small, shy smile. "Caleb," she said softly. "Yes? Let's make it quick tonight." Caleb froze for a moment, just like the first time he heard those words, but only for a moment. Then, he broke into a warm, amused smile and stepped closer, touching her hand. "Not tonight," he said gently. "Not ever again. With you. I want every moment slow, every moment real." Elsa's smile grew wider, her eyes shining with emotion. "Slow is good," she whispered. "Slow feels safe." "Slow feels right," Caleb answered. They entered the room together. Not rushed, not uncertain, but steady and peaceful. For the first time, it wasn't tradition guiding Caleb. It wasn't old rules or stiff habits. It was understanding. It was honesty. It was love, quiet, growing, and strong. In the days that followed, the ranch changed in small ways that meant everything. Caleb and Elsa created new routines, ones that fit them both. They took breaks together, instead of working separately. They ate lunch outside when the weather was nice. They talked every evening, even if it was only about simple things. And every morning, Caleb matched his steps with hers, walking side by side. The townspeople noticed the change too. They watched the way Caleb stood proudly beside Elsa in town. They watched how gently he treated her, how openly he smiled at her. And although some people still whispered, most stopped when they saw the bond between them steady and unshakable. Caleb no longer cared about whispers. Elsa no longer feared them. One evening, months later, as they stood on the porch watching the last light of day fade into soft darkness, Caleb placed his arm around Elsa's waist. "You happy here?" he asked softly. Elsa leaned gently against him. "I am," she said. "More than ever." Caleb smiled. "Good, because I don't ever want this life without you." Elsa looked down at him with a tender, emotional gaze. "Then we stay," she whispered. "Together." And they did. Their life was not perfect. Ranch work stayed hard. Weather stayed unpredictable. Fences still broke. Cattle still strayed. And unexpected problems always found their way to the land. But through it all, they faced every day as a team, talking, supporting, laughing, learning. Caleb broke tradition for her, and Elsa filled the ranch with a new warmth he never imagined possible. And in that quiet, steady life they built, they found something both of them had been missing for years. A home neither wanted to leave.